Maghrib, the hour of twilight, the moment when prayers ascend, but shadows also descend. For one unsuspecting village in Indonesia, this sunset wasn't beautiful, it was a blood offering. 8 children went out to play, only 2 returned, and the horror was just beginning. Welcome back to the channel, and prepare yourselves, because today we are diving deep into a terrifying, true-to-life story. Narrative so compelling it has been drawn from the Sunnah of the Prophet and traditional Hadith, which explicitly warns that small children and women should never be outside during the Maghrib prayer time, as this is when the jinn are most active. Our terrifying visual opens with the sweet, peaceful melody of the call to prayer, but that serenity was brutally juxtaposed with the ominous, terrifying roar of thunder. On rain-soaked paths, a teenage boy was sprinting, absolutely frantic. His face was etched with raw fear and panic as he desperately sought help, trying to escape something invisible yet deadly. He was clearly running for his life. The boy thought he found safety, scrambling inside a large, concrete drainage pipe. He must have thought, finally, I've made it out alive. But just as relief washed over him, a horrifying, non-physical entity of monstrous shapes suddenly hung upside down from the opposite end of the pipe. The sheer terror caused the boy to freeze. The entity vanished, but his nightmare was only starting. A horrific, gigantic, spectral hand smashed violently through the wall of the pipe, grasping blindly for him. Screaming hysterically, he scrambled toward the exit. The hand retreated, only for the full spectral entity, the jinn, to materialize right in front of him. His desperate screams were abruptly silenced as the scene cut away. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the local religious school, or maktab, where the teacher, or ustad, reinforced this very danger. He warned the children against being outside after the Maghrib azan. He explicitly detailed that bad jinn and shaitan devils wander the exterior world during that time, and that they specifically target the youngest, most vulnerable children. And insisted they remain safely within their homes during the evening shakur, teaching Sunnah passed down by the Prophet. The children sat quietly, taking in his words. We then transition to the next morning, observing the village in a state of busy, bustling normalcy. We meet Lani, a young woman intensely focused on her computer, studying for her admission exams. Her brother, Yoga, was gearing up to play football in a neighboring village. Now, Yoga wasn't Lani's biological brother. They were cousins, as Yoga had been living with Lani's family since he was orphaned. In a sweet, furtive moment, Yoga was caught feeding a stray cat at the doorway, hiding it from Lani. Lani was immediately irritated, snapping at him because now the cat would certainly return every day for food. Yoga accepted her reprimand, then began teasing her, suggesting she should go watch the game because Dio would be there, and Dio, he joked, only watched Lani. We understood that Dio liked Lani, though the feeling was definitely not mutual. Their playful bickering was interrupted by the loud horn of a pickup truck. Yoga's teammates arrived, rushing him to leave. His mother saw him off, but immediately realized he forgot his water bottle. Concerned he would suffer from dehydration, she pleaded with Lani to deliver it. Lani flat-out refused, prioritizing her studies. It wasn't until her mother offered her money for the trouble that Lani finally relented. The game was in another village, making the journey quite long. By the time Lani arrived, the match was already in progress. She handed the water to Yoga, who was sitting on the bench as a reserve. Lani, thrifty and practical, decided to stay put and wait for the game to end, saving her bus fare. On the field, Dio, the boy with a crush, spotted Lani. Distracted, he immediately messed up the play, suffering a painful injury that forced him out of the game. This accident was a lucky break for Yoga, who finally got to take the field. While Yoga was ecstatic to be playing, Dio was equally thrilled to be benched, as he could now finally flirt with Lani. Lani gave him absolutely no attention, even moving away slightly when he sat down right next to her. Yoga played intensely, but selfishly. He was determined to score a goal himself, refusing to pass the ball. His ego cost them dearly. He made a critical mistake. The opposition gained control, and despite their best efforts, the team lost the match. The captain was utterly livid, blaming Yoga for the loss because of his attempt to be a solo hero. He shoved and began yelling abuse at Yoga. Yoga's friends intervened, defending him, and the confrontation immediately devolved into a vicious brawl among teammates. The coach had to rush in and separate the fighting players. Lani, stunned by the violence, was trying to process the chaos. Dio, still trying to play the heroic protector, leaned in to tell her not to worry, only to be immediately struck in the head by a soccer ball. Finally, the team boarded the pickup truck to leave, just as the chilling sound of the Maghrib azan echoed through the air. The coach urgently told them to stop and go pray at the nearby mosque. A boy named Yando insisted they had to rush home. Yoga rightly argued they should stop and pray, but Yando sharply snapped at him, reminding him that the loss was his fault and that if they stopped now, they might just get into another fight with the angry opposing team. Lani, too, agreed they needed to get home quickly for her studies. They drove off, calling back to the coach that they would stop and pray somewhere along the road. The coach, now deeply worried, watched them go, urging them to drive safely. Meanwhile, back in the village, we see the familiar scene of men gathered at the local tea house. A man named Adi was seen leaving. The locals warned him not to be out during Maghrib. Ignoring their warnings, he walked out and stared up at the deep red, unsettling sky. Adi had returned after 20 years. He was the boy from the first part of this entire tragedy, now a young man. His expression made it clear that he sensed the return of the same dreadful peril he had witnessed 2 decades earlier. If you haven't seen the explanation of the first part of this horrifying story, where Aadai first faced the jinn, check the link in the description box below. You'll need that context to truly understand what Adi suffered 20 years ago. So make sure you hit that subscribe button while you're there. Let's return to the group in the pickup truck. Lani was sitting up front next to the driver, Rahim. She complained bitterly about Yoga's foolishness and how he cost the team the match. It was obvious she strongly disliked him, mirroring the animosity of his own teammates. In the back, Yoga's group was deep in conversation, ruthlessly trash-talking the team captain they had just fought. They were joking darkly, wishing that the captain would break his leg during the next practice. Suddenly, tragedy struck. A small boy appeared abruptly in the path of the pickup. Rahim slammed the brakes. They all rushed out and were met with a horrific sight. The child was dead, his body mutilated and soaked in blood. Terror gripped the entire group. They scrambled to cover the body with banana leaves, and Rahim immediately called the police station to report the fatal accident. Lani, profoundly traumatized by the carnage, moved away to sit by herself in the vehicle. Then, in a chilling moment, she saw the dead, bloody boy standing clearly on the jungle road, beckoning to her with a gesture. It was an incredibly unnerving, supernatural sight. A moment later, Yoga noticed Lani was missing from the truck and the surrounding area. Panic rising, the boys searched frantically, concluding she must have strayed into the dark jungle. We see Lani walking, mesmerized, following the figure of the bloody boy. The boy seemed to be urging her to go play. She was walking like a drone, utterly unaware she was following a deceased person. The boy abruptly vanished into the jungle. Lani stopped, and slowly, terrifyingly, her senses returned. Alone in the thick, darkening forest, she began to tremble uncontrollably. That's when the jinn, the horrific spectral power of Maghrib, appeared right behind her. It approached her, and then, in a terrifying, unseen transfer, it entered her body. Her eyes rolled back, becoming stark white. Lani was completely possessed and under the jinn's control. The boys had no idea what to do. After searching together for a bit with no luck, they made the fatal decision to split up. Yondo, still irritable, spotted a figure standing ahead. He shone his flashlight, and the beam revealed the terrifying shape of the jinn itself. The scene shifted, and we saw Yoga in the same general area. He found Lani. She was sitting, weeping softly. As he rushed toward her, she vanished. Then, suddenly, Lani was standing right behind him, holding a large stone. She raised it, ready to attack, when Rahim called out to Yoga from behind. The sound broke the jinn's hold momentarily, and Lani immediately collapsed, unconscious. The three realized that the rest of the boys were nowhere to be found. Rahim and Yoga quickly carried the unconscious Lani home. The entire village was now consumed by dread. The parents of the missing boys and other villagers searched everywhere, combing the jungle repeatedly, but found no trace of the 6 children. The police informed Lani's mother that Lani was in a state of deep shock, unable to speak, and insisted that no one pressure her. Lani's mother, distraught, told Lani to rest and speak only when she was ready. Neighbors came to offer condolences, but were clearly afraid to get too close to Lani. Yoga watched Lani from a distance, troubled and fearful of his cousin. Meanwhile, Adi went to the accident site. He inquired about the accident, and everything seemed normal until he learned that 6 boys had vanished during Maghrib. Adi was deeply troubled. Only 2 of the 8 children involved had been recovered. Adi looked at the body of the boy killed by the truck. A specific mark near the boy's neck seemed terribly familiar. Adi realized he had met this boy's parents before. The boy had previously disappeared around Maghrib, and Adi had been investigating that very case. The boy's mother had still held out hope he was alive, but Adi knew the tragic truth of what had happened to him. Driving away, Adi pondered the chilling similarity to the events of 20 years ago. He had many questions, but no answers. His childhood friend, Ayu, called Ayu, had helped Adi battle the evil jinn years ago. They were now in a relationship, but while Ayu had managed to move on, Adi was still emotionally tethered to the past. Ayu warned him not to pursue the investigation further, fearing he would put his life at risk. But Adi was resolute. He needed to see this horror through to the end. He told Ayu not to worry and hung up. He felt he was finally close to facing the ancient devil again, an opportunity he could not let slip away. Ayu sadly pulled out a diary containing photos of friends who had fallen victim to the jinn 2 decades prior, the event that still prevented Aud from moving forward with his life. In the village, Yoga was playing football with his friends. Suddenly, he saw his 6 missing teammates. They stood motionless, backs toward him. He couldn't comprehend why they were just standing there. Then, abruptly, all 6 of them turned their heads at the same time. Their eyes were stark white, and they began to smile. Yoga woke up with a scream, throat dry with terror. It had all been a nightmare. Thirsty, he left his room for water. As he was pouring a drink, he heard strange noises and the distinct cry of a cat outside the door. Bravely, he opened the door. He was stunned to see Lani. She was brutally, savagely killing the neighborhood cat, the one he always fed. Not only were Lani's eyes completely white, but her face was smeared with blood, suggesting she was drinking the cat's blood. Yoga was overwhelmed by fear at this horrifying, monstrous version of his sister. He fled back inside. Gathering his courage again, he stepped out. Lani, the blood, and the dead cat were all gone. Shaken, he went back inside, only to be ambushed. Lani was standing right there, holding a knife. She screamed wildly and charged at him. Yoga screamed in terror. His mother rushed in, but found Yoga alone, screaming on the floor. He tried to explain everything to his mother, pulling her to Lani's room. Lani was asleep peacefully in her bed. His mother insisted he must have been dreaming and wandering in his sleep. Yoga accepted her explanation, but then the camera revealed the truth. Lani was sound asleep, but on her hand, smeared blood, the cat's blood, was clearly visible. Yoga hadn't been dreaming at all. The next morning, Lani sat at the breakfast table. Yoga went to the table to eat before school. Their eyes met. Lani gave him a truly horrific stare. The combination of her chilling gaze and the trauma of the night before was overwhelming. Yoga lost control and wet himself. His mother, confused and irritated, couldn't understand his extreme fear, as Lani seemed perfectly normal. Mortified, Yoga ran from the room. Meanwhile, villagers continued their hopeless search for the 6 missing boys. 2 young men lamented that the children had vanished like doves. A security guard joined them, noting that 20 years prior, his police officer father had handled a similar case where boys disappeared from a neighboring village. The investigation revealed that the disappearances were caused by a supernatural power, a jinn. The guard added that even with special abilities, his father couldn't stop the jinn because it was impossibly powerful. At school, everyone was staring at Yoga. He and Lani were the only ones who hadn't vanished. Anas and his gang immediately cornered Yoga, intent on getting revenge for the game. Anas was furious. Not only had Yoga cost them the match, but now, with the missing boys, their team was facing disqualification. Anas suspected Yoga and his team had orchestrated the disappearances. He demanded that Yoga produce his team members by the next match, or there would be hell to pay. Suddenly, Lani approached. She looked completely abnormal, moving with a bizarre stiffness. She announced in a chilling monotone, "They will return, and they will take him at Maghrib." No one understood the dark threat. In the jungle, the search party made a horrifying discovery. Not just a dead dog, but multiple animals whose bodies had been violently torn apart and scattered. They were bewildered, unable to fathom who could commit such a gruesome act against innocent animals. Class started. The teacher asked all students to pray for the 6 missing boys. Yoga looked at Lani, who wasn't praying. She was staring at him with that same menacing look. Yoga was overcome with fear. Later, during lunch break, Dio was hiding in the washroom. He heard Anas and his friend enter and quickly stayed hidden. Anas was complaining about Dio, arguing that he was too loyal to Yoga and shouldn't be trusted. Dio realized Anas was planning to beat him up if he caught him. Anas went to the sink. In the mirror, he saw the horrific shape of the jinn behind him. He spun around. The jinn was gone. Then a stall door rattled. He heard humming and recognized Lani's voice. He approached the stall, demanding to know why she was in the boys' washroom. Lani's voice answered from the opposite side of the room. Then she materialized right behind him, brandishing a knife. Her eyes were pure, terrifying white. She whispered repeatedly, insisting that a noose must go play. Just as Lani was about to attack, Dio burst out of his stall. The shock of the interruption immediately calmed the possessed Lani, and she vanished. Dio comforted the utterly shocked Anis. After school, Yoga decided to follow Lani at a distance. He was terrified of her, but he felt compelled to keep watch. He ran into Anis and Dio. They recounted the terrifying washroom attack. Yoga confirmed his suspicion. Lani had completely changed since returning from the jungle. In the face of this supernatural horror, the conflict between Anis and Yoga dissolved. They were now allies. Dio suggested that this was a repeat of the 20-year-old story involving Adi. Anis dismissed the idea, unable to believe in such spiritual matters. Suddenly, the villagers rushed past them. The three boys followed and found the widespread carnage of dead livestock and animals. The villagers were terrified, immediately recalling the horror of 20 years prior. Adi arrived at the scene, confirming his absolute certainty. The jinn was back. He noticed Yoga, but Yoga ignored him, rushing home to check on Lani. At home, Lani was seemingly asleep. Yoga's mother came in, startled him, and said Lani had been asleep since returning from school. She added that she needed rest herself, having not slept the previous night. As Yoga left, Lani sat up in bed, staring menacingly at his retreating back. Yoga eventually fell asleep on the sofa. He was woken by sinister whispering and the terrifying sight of Lani's face. His mother arrived and saved him from the nightmare, asking him to deliver some parcels. As he prepared to leave with an uncle, Lani said goodbye in an eerie, mocking voice, asking if he would be back before Maghrib. Her unsettling stare followed him as he drove away. Yoga noticed people rushing everywhere, desperately trying to get their children back inside before sundown. Panic had seized the village. Parents were seen physically dragging reluctant children toward their homes. Anis was deeply frightened and called his friend Anto, warning him. He repeated Lani's threat about Maghrib. Anto scoffed, convinced he would be fine. Just then, the Maghrib azan began. Anto hung up to pray. Immediately, a loud, violent banging erupted at his door. He opened it. No one was there. He closed the door, only to see the horrific, monstrous faces of the missing boys peering through his windows. Inside, Yando appeared. Yando turned his head unnaturally. The other possessed boys materialized white eyes, blood smears, and horrific smiles. They swarmed Anto's father, came to call him for prayer, but found an empty room. Anto was gone. Anis was desperately trying to call Dio to warn him. Dio, still praying, missed the call. The possessed boys found Anis. Yando stood outside his door, calling his name. The boys attacked Anis. Dio finished praying and finally received Anis's call. Anis was screaming hysterically, only repeating the names of the missing boys. Dio realized his friend was in grave danger. The boys carried Anis away. Dio rushed toward Anis's house. He ran into Yoga, who ignored his uncle's plea to stay safe at home. They fled together to help Anis. As they neared Anis's house, their missing friends, now monstrous, white-eyed, bloody, smiling entities, approached them. Yando suddenly jumped from a rooftop, wielding a machete. The two friends ran for their lives, chased by the armed, possessed children. They didn't know where they were running, only that they needed to survive. The possessed boys killed anyone who tried to help Yoga and Dio. Villagers who intervened were mercilessly slaughtered. If you're finding this story as intense as we are, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps us bring you more terrifying tales like this one. The atmosphere in this village is completely shattered. Just when Yoga and Dio thought they were doomed, they saw Addie's car. Addie had returned to rescue them. They scrambled inside, and Addie drove them to temporary safety. The possessed boys, having lost their targets, returned to Anis. Anis and his remaining friends were badly wounded, but alive. Yondo was trying to attack Anis again, but a humming sound stopped him. Yondo smiled horribly and stepped aside. Lani walked forward, humming. She was clearly the primary host. The Jinn was using her to lead the charge. She stopped, and the terrifying Jinn emerged from behind her. Floating, it ascended into the air. Anis screamed in utter terror. Addie drove Yoga and Dio to a safe location. He asked them if they had cursed or spoken ill of anyone on the evening of the accident. Yoga remembered they had been cursing Anis and his whole team on the drive home. Adi explained that this behavior attracts the Jinn. He revealed he did the same thing 20 years ago with his friend, Samar. Samar cursed his teacher during Maghrib, attracting the Jinn known as Ummu Sibyan. Samar became possessed and first killed the teacher they had cursed, then became so violent he murdered his own brother. Samar eventually died. The Ummu Sibyan Jinn had tried to possess Adi next, but Ayu saved him. Yoga and Dio were horrified, finally understanding the catastrophic danger they were in. The night passed. At Fajr dawn, a villager going to market found the dead bodies of the possessed boys on the road. The entire village was shocked. These were the members of Dio's team, the ones who had been cursed that evening. Dio, sleeping next to Yoga, woke to a phone call confirming the deaths. The two boys wept, holding on to each other. Adi arrived with food. He realized the Jinn had grown incredibly strong. Containment would be difficult. They quickly headed back to the village. Graves were being prepared for the dead children. The parents were devastated. The whole village was gripped by a consuming fear. Lani's mother was terrified for Yoga. Adi watched the burials from a distance. Lani spotted him and seemed to recognize him immediately. She hid briefly behind the security guard, then appeared right next to Adi. She greeted him, saying she recognized him. He was her most special host. She mocked him for returning, saying if he came to save the children, he was already too late. Adi asserted he was here to finish the Jinn. Lani laughed, stating he couldn't stop her, and that he would only watch everything end, just as he had watched his own village be destroyed 20 years ago. As Lani walked away, Adi was not seeing his cousin. He saw the terrifying presence of the Jinn. Shaken but resolute, Adi found Yoga and Dio. He gave them amulets, ordering them to go home immediately and hang them around Lani's room to trap the Jinn inside her, while he prepared to confront it. The two friends rushed home and quickly started hanging the protective amulets. But before they could secure Lani's room, Lani and her mother appeared. Lani's mother was overjoyed to see the boys alive, fearing they had been killed like the others. The moment Lani got close to the amulets, the Jinn inside her screamed in violent agony. The sound was unbearably loud. Adi rushed in, followed by the security guard and two other villagers who had been waiting outside. Adi placed a cloth bearing sacred writings, Darood, on Lani's head and began reciting prayers, trying to force the jinn out. But before the exorcism could work, the security guard and the two men seized Adi. Lani broke free and shouted that Adi was the killer, claiming he controlled and murdered the children. Yoga and Dio tried desperately to tell the truth, but Lani claimed Adi had them possessed, too. Lani had orchestrated this entire ambush at the cemetery, poisoning the guard's mind beforehand. Adi realized he was trapped. He yelled at Yoga and Dio to run. Night fell. A crowd gathered at Lani's house, believing the child killer had been caught. The guard and the two men protected Adi, waiting for the police. Lani's mother was there, but Lani was gone. Lani had gone to the mosque. Before the muezzin could give the call to prayer, she struck him, knocking him unconscious. She went to the microphone. Adi tried one last time to reason with the security guard, revealing his village name, the same village the guard's father had served in 20 years ago. He insisted that his father had helped him and that Lani was the one possessed. Just then, Lani's eerie humming voice began broadcasting from the mosque loudspeakers. She was calling the children outside to play. The villagers froze. The children became instantly hypnotized, rushing outside. Anyone who tried to stop them was attacked by their own kids. The village fell silent, emptied of children. Lani's mother recognized her daughter's voice. Adi desperately begged to be freed, warning that they were running out of time. The guard finally realized the truth and unlocked Adi's hands. But before they could escape, the 6 possessed boys burst through the door. They had completely broken it down. They attacked Adi, the guard, and the 2 men. They fought desperately against the 6 superhuman boys. Adi fought his way clear, trying to escape and save the children. One possessed boy pursued him, and Adi struck him, knocking him unconscious. He desperately recalled Lani's words at the cemetery. She would kill all the children right here. Here meant the cemetery. Adi realized he had to go there immediately. The stakes couldn't be higher. We are down to our final seconds. If you love deep, lore-heavy horror explanations, drop us a comment below and tell us what you think Adi's final move will be. Adi raced toward the gravesite. Sure enough, all the village children, including Yoga and Dio, had gathered there, their eyes white and vacant. Lani was floating in the air, the jinn towering behind her, controlling her and directing the children toward a nearby pond or lake. The jinn clearly intended to drown them all. Adi knew the only way to save everyone was to defeat the jinn itself. He stood before the demon. He told the jinn it could kill the children, but begged it to spare Lani, offering himself as the new, willing host instead. The jinn was delighted. Adi was its favorite host, and since Adi was grown, the jinn couldn't possess him without his consent. Adi convinced the jinn he had suffered enough since his friends died and was willingly offering his soul as a replacement. The jinn brought Lani down, and she immediately fell unconscious. The jinn entered Adi's body. Adi writhed and convulsed in extreme agony, but even in his pain he was satisfied. His plan had worked. Fighting the jinn's control, he began reciting the azan call to prayer. The holy sound weakened the jinn's hold. All the children, including the 6 boys, began to shake and return to normal. They all collapsed. Adi, fully possessed, knew he had one final, terrifying step. To prevent the jinn from using him to harm others, he performed the ultimate self-sacrifice. He walked toward the lake and plunged himself into the water, ending his life and the jinn's deadly possession. The village was saved. The 6 boys, who hadn't truly died, woke up. The children at the cemetery regained consciousness. Yoga and Dio cautiously approached Lani, still fearful. But Lani's eyes were clear, and she immediately embraced Yoga. ADI had saved this village, finally achieving the closure and redemption he couldn't find 20 years ago. ADI had left a farewell letter for AIU. Reading it, she was overcome with profound emotion. The villagers honored ADI, casting flowers into the lake where he sacrificed himself. AW felt deep pain, but also a sense of peace, seeing the rescued children. AD was now the village's true superhero. And that brings us to the end of this terrifying tale of the Jinn Ummu Sibyan. If you enjoyed this deep dive into supernatural horror and the ultimate sacrifice, do you and forget to hit that notification bell and subscribe to the channel so you and miss our next story.